What does home mean to you? Those 4 letters, Home. Is it the home where you were born? Is it the place that you're going home to tonight? For those of you who may have traveled to come here to TEDxQueenstown, which is a glorious place to come, is there an empty bed that's going to be in your home tonight because you'll be staying overnight here? Is your home your sanctuary? Is it your castle? Is it a refuge? Is it a worry? Is home for you somewhere that you need, but maybe the home means there might be a trade-off? Is your home a dream? So I gave up my home. Up until about 3.5 years ago, I was in a lot of different places, but I always had a home. And when I worked internationally, there was that empty bed waiting for me. And when I was clever, I was able to, when I was living in England, where I've been the last 15 or so years, I was able to email friends in the States and say, hey, can you come and stay in my place for 10 days? I hate leaving it empty. It just seems such a waste. And way before Airbnb, and I could never charge my friends money to come and stay in my home. But I was coming up to a trip of all sorts of fascinating work, doing leadership development, women's development, and mentoring. And it was Jordan, and it was Cyprus, and it was Vietnam, Geneva. I was spending Christmas in Wellington. I was in Australia. I had to go back to the States at one point for another corporate assignment. And it was about 4 months long. And I thought, it's winter. No one wants to come and stay in London in the winter in the rain. So I practiced. I'd done a gap year when I turned 40, and it was pretty cool. It was about 5 months, but it still counted as my first kind of overseas experience. And I loved it. I loved that downsizing. I loved having things in storage and not having a place. So with that practice, I put things back into storage, this time in a corporate, secure, insurance facility, turned the key, handed in the keys to my flat, and set off. Now I fully expected to come back and reestablish, but opportunities have a way of just presenting. And those 4 months, I had this realization, I'm pushing up to 50, and I'm actually happier on the road than I ever was in that home, in that apartment, alone, trying to see friends. Everyone was busy. I was busy. Too busy when someone said, can you serve on a committee? Can you help me with something? Can you talk to my niece about what university she might go to? I said, I could, but, only for a little bit because I'm really busy. And when I was on this travel experience, all of a sudden I had lots of time. And I had time to say yes. And I realized that mattered to me way more than stuff. And that freedom to really just explore and to be available just opened my heart. So I'm always at home. And right here is one of my homes. It's a community. It's the Esalen Institute, Big Sur, California, Mind, Body, Spirit Center. I give workshops there sometimes. I've been going there 20 years. I learned mindfulness there, which is now part of my work. And it's always there for me. I've worked in their kitchen. It's a big part of my sort of secure base. And then there's family and friends. So because I was in Washington, D.C., and then in London, those are cities where people from all over the world come and go. They come and go a lot. And I have friends all over the world. And when I used to be too busy, when they would say, can you come? I said, of course not, I'm busy. I'm important, I have an ego, I'm busy. And I started calling them and emailing and saying, is that invitation still open? Can I come stay for 4 or 5 days? Can I come see what it's like in Ho Chi Minh City and meet your friend Vinny, who is making chocolate? And I could do these things, and it was awesome. So it took courage. This is a picture of my father. It's 1947. He is signing papers at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, to start a model United Nations with other students around the US and with Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, my dad was born in 1919, grew up in Shanghai. When he entered his teens, his whole world changed. The Japanese invaded. His family businesses became insecure. And because his family was established, they sent him to boarding school in the States. And of course, that invasion of the Japanese turned into the communist, and we all know what happened. And so my dad reestablished, and he really valued what he found in the States, this idea of freedom, this idea of democracy, this idea that each one of us, we have a voice. We have a mission, we have a quest, we have a purpose in the world. And as a father, he looked at me, his daughter, and said, that is where happiness lies. You must find what you're meant to do in the world, and you must give it your whole heart. It's not anything to do with being courageous, being uncourageous. It's just, this is a must, you are my daughter. And so that kind of messaging is hard to ignore. And I call myself half white. Being different, being in a small town in upstate New York with a father like this, it meant that I was always different anyway. And to be a little bit more different, and to be this woman who sought adventure, who sought mission, who sought somehow finding my voice and my way to make the world a better place. I had that within me, and I'm grateful. So the other piece of being unafraid to be different. In my early 30s, I'd been right there on life's track. I had bought my first apartment by the time I turned 30. I'd gotten into university, great university. I'd gotten a good job, started a career, and I just sort of was thinking, the next step. I was seeing a nice guy, the idea of, marriage, children, and my quest, my mission. And I thought, something, I really don't want to have my own children. I don't want to be the mother that leaves all the time because something else is pulling and calling. And so I made a tough decision. And I found this book, Your Money or Your Life, around that time. And I also stepped out of my corporate job, and part of it was the message that your time is really finite. You don't get it back. And any time that you're spending in work to fund that life schedule I just explained, which we all know about, if you're trading off work because you want to do these things with the money that you've made at work, what if your work were your quest, and what if it were what you were waiting to do every day? And so I started making tough choices, and I started putting together a toolbox. Not only the courage in the toolbox, not only my voice in the toolbox, but this idea that because time is so finite, that I really owed it to myself to use my time as best I could, and to learn to listen not only to that voice inside that, for me, I've always called my heart's desire, where I really feel that resonance, that I'm in my purpose, but also just to embrace the difference and what that means. So what do I do with all this freedom? How do I make it work? So I'm really fortunate that in the 20 years between my early 30s and my 50s, I've found work that is valued in the world, executive coaching, working in corporations with leaders, and I'm beginning now to give mindfulness workshops to major corporate banks, which is extraordinary how the world is changing. And that these projects, and I work with a business school too in Switzerland, and these projects are defined 3 to 6 to 9 months ahead. I've got those dates, and I can book those in. Also, when family and friends have big events, weddings, and big birthday milestone celebrations, I know those dates too, a good 3 to 6 months ahead. Those go right in there too. I have no excuse to miss anything, and I want to be there. And so with those bits booked, then I start looking at volunteering and what it is that really fulfills me about being able to say yes in the world. I'm available. And because a lot of the work I love doing is in tricky places, in places where it takes a lot of time to start and form relationships and to build trust, it's important to me to have time and time to sort of hang out there. And so I've been working for almost 7 years with the CEO of a children's health charity in Brazil called Saúde Criança. And I've also, for a few years now, been working in Costa Rica with leatherback sea turtle research. And it's been really, really amazing to be there in January, which is peak nesting season. And so you've got turtles coming up, you've got hatchlings hatching, and it's busy, it's exhilarating. We measure the turtles. If they're tagged, we kind of mark that they've been there. We watch and count the eggs as they lay them. This is usually in the dead of the night. And then if the nest, we mark the nest, and the next morning that nest might be vulnerable either to animals or too close to the surf, we'll gently dig it up and relocate it so that those eggs, those 80 or so eggs, have a chance to survive. Now I have a photo up here of an apartment building, a Parisian apartment building. So as I've been living this lifestyle of putting together this portfolio of work, volunteering, friends and family, happiness, thinking back to the time when I had an apartment, not quite that beautiful, but an apartment by myself next to other people in their apartment. I've been looking at statistics and reading books and papers. Because of the baby boom and because of economic independence, we are living alone a lot more than we ever used to in the Western world. And so in New Zealand, that's 24% of households have just one person. In the US, it's 28%. In the UK, it's 30%. And that number's been growing pretty quickly. Marketers love this. Because if we're all on our own, we need one of everything if we're not sharing, right? But social isolation has been shown to be more deadly than obesity, smoking, drinking. It's really bad for our health. And there's two pieces how this ended up, I think, is that independence, especially in the US where I spent my first 35 years, you're meant to be independent. If you're still living at home, 18, 19, 20, something's wrong with you and your parents, that you're not established. And so there's that piece of, you gotta make it on your own. Because as a woman, I can make my own money. Hasn't been that former economic need for me to be in a marriage. I can do work that I wouldn't have had a chance to do 40 years ago because I wouldn't have been allowed to walk into the boardroom except to bring the coffee. And I am so grateful for those opportunities and for those women who have gone before me to give me that chance to have my voice. This is one of the places I go. This is a little Parisian hotel. when I need to do invoicing, when I need to look at my taxes, when I need that private space that I wouldn't want to impose upon a friend or family, but I need kind of an office and downtime for a few days. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'd really like to sort of take a deep breath and give you a chance to take a deep breath as well. What did you think of me when I walked onto the stage and said I was without a home? I've been told by some people, you can't say you're homeless. That's disrespectful to homeless people. But I am. I'm homeless with gorgeous, lovely friends who are happy to welcome me. I'm a good cook. I'm a great babysitter. I mean, I pull my share. But I'm lucky because I've got the courage to ask. I've got the courage to say, may I come stay? And I've got the resilience to know that my friends are friends because they're honest. And if it's not a good time, they'll say, hey, it's not a good time, ask so-and-so. And I'll say, okay, that's fine. And that art of asking, seeing Amanda Palmer's TED Talk about 3 years ago now, really, really helped me sort of say, oh, yes, asking. So I'm going to leave you with this question. What would you trade to have your heart's desire? What's been really moving for me is realizing I'm living my bucket list. There's very little that I say I can't, or not now, or it's not going to work out, or, oh, I couldn't possibly. I say, well, gosh, September's available. So this happiness that I have, this feeling that I've, for me, come up with a formula that works. I'd like to ask you, are there heart's desires and dreams unfulfilled? And is there a story that's keeping you from taking that step? Thank you so much.